Welcome back for Yu-Gi-Oh! Chapter 407 Talk. No, I'm only kidding, it's still Hunter x Hunter. This is a chapter where the characters describe what cards will do before they play them, but it's not like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they should probably all know what the cards do already. I mean, they're competitive players, come on. In this case, our hero's never played the game before, so she needs to know how it all works, and so do we. But first I have to do whatever the opposite of gloating is. I have to confess my mistakes, I guess. Because I thought Dogman was on a new mission looking through the funeral procession crowd for a potential Nen user of a specific type, and not still hunting for a Serednik guard from the tattoo list. I had two reasons for this. One, Dogman's ability lets him sense Nen types, which doesn't seem relevant if you're just looking for a guard from the list. And two, Dogman's success in this mission is supposed to signal the beginning of the end, which I don't see how that follows from just gaining a spy who can keep tabs on Serednik, which is what Morena said her objective was. But it would seem she's got bigger plans for Volkson than just spying. And it's still possible that Volkson is also a potential specialist or whatever, and that's why Dogman grabbed her instead of one of the others. So that part might be sort of true still, but overall I was wrong about this one. Kudos to the commenters who made the call. There were a number of you, and you all get the gloating rights this week. I am gonna bounce right back from this setback and double down on my guess that Odison is a Beyond plant. Once again, he's the one bringing up the threat of Nen, while everyone else's thinking is more mundane. And he's already jumped to the possibility that Serednik is being threatened here, which makes sense for a secret Nen user trying to protect Serednik. I still don't know how Volkson killing Serednik would bring about any sort of beginning of the end from Morena's point of view, but hey, if we want to understand her goal, we just have to wait for Volkson to pick the objective card. That'll clear everything up, I'm sure. But what the heck, let's make a prediction anyway. In Chapter 404, Kurapika's big deduction was that Benjamin would want to kill one of the Mafia-connected princes to start a Mafia war and justify the special martial law. So that's a reason to kill Serednik. If his death is taken as evidence of a Mafia war, then martial law gets declared, and presumably that helps Morena somehow. Possibly via Kaiser and whatever contingency he's got in place to put the Ministry of Justice in control. And the good news for Morena is that if this Volkson thing doesn't work out, Kaiser's already running a separate plan to kill Luzurus, which could wind up having the same result. So okay, that's how kidnapping and suborning Volkson could be the beginning of the end. That's maybe what's at stake in the game. Now let's talk about the game. Negotiation card Duel Monsters is a contest between the parent player Morena, who wants to make a request of the child, and the child player Volkson, who must return an answer to that request. Each turn, Volkson chooses a parent card to gain some information from Morena, and then Morena chooses a face-down child card just to remove it from Volkson's hand. The game ends when the child's only got one card left, at which point that card indicates Volkson's final answer to whatever Morena's requesting. I'll quickly observe that since Volkson goes first, she can get exactly 4 parent cards worth of information out of Morena before she's out of time. She can give herself an extra turn in the game by choosing Deal to get a card back, but that choice itself doesn't get her any new information, and then it's Morena's turn and she removes a card, so then the game takes 5 turns to resolve instead of 4, but Volk still only gets 4 cards worth of answers. So she's not being offered all the information, she's gotta try and prioritize learning what's most important. And I'll go over all the cards in detail later in the video. First, it's reasonable to ask, what's the point of this game? Volk can already say yes or no. She can already guess that she won't want to say yes, and she can guess that saying no will have some pretty unpleasant consequences for her. This whole negotiation is conducted with the understanding that Morena can kill her at any moment if she doesn't get the answer she's looking for. So the hook for Volkson is the existence of this X card, which allows her to walk away safely from the Haley hideout without giving an answer. This carrot is being dangled to get her to play, so it's fair to assume that what Morena's getting out of it is just the opportunity to reveal all this information that the game forces her to reveal. Morena wants a question and answer session. She wants to give up all the info Volkson can cleverly make her give up. She just wants Volkson to think she's exerting power within the game to ask those questions and get those answers because this gives Volkson agency in the exchange, which she wouldn't have if Morena just gagged her and then gave her a ledger containing all the info she's trying to share. In fact, within the rules of the game, Volkson has all the agency since she's choosing parent cards that are face up, Morena's only choosing the face down child cards to eliminate them randomly, and even then she ends up letting Volkson choose those as well. The game seemingly exists to make Volkson more comfortable in this situation where she's been abducted by serial killers, and able to conduct an in-depth conversation, which Morena hopes will result in getting a yes rather than a no. Actually, let's take another look at this panel from 405. The official translation has Morena saying, "I'll try my best to make sure we get a yes," and then gamer girl Gelato gives her a supportive "never give up." But here's what Voracious Drake makes of it. "Let's do our best to ensure that they don't say no," and then Gelato says, "Let's do this." Now, "let's make sure to get a yes," and "let's try to ensure they don't say no" sound like they mean about the same thing, but when 405 dropped, the translators didn't know about negotiation card, where yes and no are not the only possible answers. So I'm trusting the Drake to have been more literal here, and it's actually relevant that Morena said they didn't want a no. Even the X card might be better. Put a pin in that, I'll come back to it. But staying on the translation issue, if it's also more literally true that Morena said, "Let's do our best," and Gelato said, "Let's do this," then we have a pretty good reason to think that Gelato is involved in the game of negotiation card. I admit I was initially skeptical of the idea for a couple of reasons. One is that when we saw Gelato just a day ago in 393, she was only level 19 and hadn't unlocked a Nen ability yet. The other is that Morena says she's played with this concession before about letting the child pick their own discards. When you put those pieces together, it means that if negotiation card is Gelato's ability, she had to have come up with it last night, and Morena had to play a game with another potential recruit either last night or this morning. Remember, the Haley lost Luini to Nobunaga and this guy who wanted to become a weapon to Hinrig, so they've got just 2 empty slots to fill up to Contagion's maximum of 23. So this is a tight time frame for Gelato to level up a couple times, invent the ability, and then for Morena to find someone to recruit who we don't know about yet, and play the game with them in which Morena made this concession. But now I am leaning towards that being exactly what happened, and it's mostly down to this Drake translation, so let this be another plug for Drake's blog. Real quick, I do think it's still possible that the game isn't a Nen ability at all. That was originally going to be my contention in this video, that it's just a game Morena came up with on her own, but then it's very strange that she's including Gelato in the effort here, unless it's just like for moral support or that they strategize together, something like that. What I don't believe for a second is that negotiation card is Morena's ability. Her ability is Contagion, and it's way the exception for characters to have 2 unrelated abilities, so I consider that very unlikely. It is worth noting that if it's Gelato's brand new ability, then it's definitely not responsible for manipulating Kaiser or anyone like that, but it is possible that the one recruit from last night was actually Kenny Wang, and that's why he knows something about Morena's plans. Well, while we're here, we might as well recap the cards in the game. The 5 child cards that represent possible answers to the request are yes, no, X for no answer, Joker for yes or no, whichever Volkson chooses, and Return, which lets her pick any card from her graveyard to be her answer. At this point in the rules explanation, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you agree to play the game. Alright, that got some of you, now let's talk about the parent cards. Objective makes Morena talk about what she's trying to do, and Power makes her reveal her power, which again is Contagion. She's not going to repeat the negotiation card explanation when this one gets picked, come on now. Question A lets Volk ask all the questions she wants, but she only gets yes, no, or yes and no answers. She can follow up and get a detailed answer by picking question B on the next turn, but only about the last question that she asked. The yes and no cards provide info about exactly what'll happen if the game ends with either of those responses given by the child, and Deal lets Volk spend a turn to get a specific card back from her graveyard. I already mentioned that she's limited to 4 answers even if Deal makes the game last 5 turns, so my guess is that of these 6, yes and no are the lowest priorities. Knowing what Morena wants and what her power can do should let Volk pretty much infer what she'd be agreeing to, and clever use of question A could fill in a lot of gaps. And there's probably no point in thinking about what happens to her if the answer is no. Deal is an interesting one because to get the card back from the graveyard, Volkson has to fulfill a small request. This should be something that wouldn't take too long and wouldn't interrupt the game, so maybe it's a Contagion Kiss? Or maybe it's a request for Volkson to answer a question about herself for a change, you know? Keep this conversation from being entirely one-sided. Deal is probably only coming into play to bring back the X card or the return card, since we already know Volkson's trying to avoid giving an answer. But we don't know whether she'll change her mind about that during the game. One thing to consider is that if she succeeds and walks out of here and tries to rejoin her friends, they probably have to assume she's been manipulated even if she hasn't been. They had a whole discussion about what to do in this very event, and they're smart enough to stick to the plan, which is, for all we know, gagging, arresting, and confining Volk to a cell, leaving her unable to share all this new info she's learned about Morena. So with that consideration in mind, how do I see this game ending? I'll get meta for a second and say I don't think the answer will be no, since it'd be a lot of build-up just to end in disappointment on both sides. Letting Volkson walk doesn't seem too likely either, although there's a caveat there that I'll mention in a second. There's the case where, purely by luck of the draw or something, Volk ends up having to answer yes, and then maybe she's compelled by Gelato's ability to get mind control and become an ally. I don't think that's very exciting. It would just seem like they could have manipulated anyone that way by getting lucky, and all the talking in the game was pointless. And finally, my prediction for what'll actually go down. Volk ends up getting to choose her own answer, either with the Joker or the return card, and she chooses to say yes, because by that time she's been convinced it's her best option. That doesn't sound likely right now, but we haven't heard what Morena has to say yet, and if she didn't have some compelling things to say, then they wouldn't be playing a game that works like this. Now, the caveat for giving no answer with the X card is that I think it could happen if Volkson has, in fact, decided to help Morena somehow, and she leaves having been recruited even though she didn't explicitly agree to it. The fact that that scenario could exist makes it clear that not getting a no is different from getting a yes. No answer in the game is fine if what Volkson has learned by that point is enough to make her act in a way Morena wants. So one way or another, I think Volkson ends up being suborned here, and I think it happens of her own will. But it's not just that I think that's the most interesting outcome, even though it is. There's this nice page where Morena clarifies how she'll be answering yes or no questions, and she says a certain group of people would answer a question like, "You don't have any bananas, do you?" with, "Yes, we have no bananas." Instead of directly answering the yes or no question posed to them, like, "No, we don't have bananas," they answer yes or no to whether the asker's implicit conclusion is right. "Yes, you were right to think that we have no bananas." Morena connects this linguistic habit to a culture of politeness, or maybe the Bushido code, and it seems like a self-deprecating joke about Japan, with the sort of Japanese Yokotani taking some playful ribbing about it. But Morena is very firm on her position. She speaks for herself and as her own subject. And at this moment, Volk thinks that Morena is absolutely full of rage, and she starts wanting to know why. So there's a few levels this line works on. She's her own subject in the grammatical sense to clear up this ambiguity in how she'll be answering. She's her own subject in the sense of subject matter, because she's about to be talking about herself quite a lot. And she's her own subject in the political sense, both in that she's not ruled by anyone in general, and that she won't subordinate herself to a parent specifically. Remember, the player roles in this game are parent and child, and we can guess Morena doesn't have very positive feelings about her father Nasubi. The idea of letting the parent Nasubi be the subject, even in something as trivial as how a question is answered, is pissing Morena off to where she's almost boiling over. So with that in mind, is she as the parent going to deal unfairly with Volkson? I don't think so. I think her child in this game is being given agency and choice as a very deliberate thing, and it sort of undermines that if the game ends in mind control just due to bad luck. So if and when Volkson answers yes, I think it'll be her own decision, and we'll just have to see how she arrives at it. So those are my predictions. This is a fun one since we'll get to see what I was right and wrong about pretty quickly. I do expect the game to be played in the next chapter, although I suppose Togashi could keep us in suspense and show Volkson walking around before we've actually learned how the game ended. But hopefully we get some gaming next week. It's not even worth a stray thought bullet point, but as I'm wrapping up, just check out this panel where he shows the staircase from Tier 3 to Tier 2. Maybe it's the palace invasion biasing me a little, but I can't help thinking that this could be a battlefield in the future. It would certainly be catastrophic for the upper classes on the boat if the lower tiers were to secure this staircase and keep the way into Tier 2 wide open for everyone. Just something to think about. Thank you so much once again to my patrons. I've been sort of toying with the idea of making shorts where I just spend a minute saying, hey, this is a popular theory on Reddit, here's why it's stupid. But I don't know, it seems a little negative to make a whole video just dismissing other people's ideas, and I'm not sure I'm concise enough to get through a whole debunking speech in just a minute anyway. So let me know in the comments if that's something that you would actually be interested in watching, and if yes, tell me a theory you'd like to see debunked. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.